Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. Today we're going to be working on this Yamaha EF1000. It's a very small, old generator. I haven't looked it up yet, but I'm guessing it's a 1000 watt peak. You know, it is what it is. Small generators are compact and quiet. This one has been sitting in a barn for 12 years plus, and I know nothing about it. The person that brought it is a regular customer of mine. You've seen me fix other machines of his, including the boat. And he said all he knows about it right now is that he poured gas into the gas tank. I guess it was him or maybe the guy that he got it from. How I originally found out about it was he called me and asked me if I could get a gas tank for an old Yamaha generator. And I said, bring it over, let me take a look at it. We don't know anything about it. I didn't know it was an enclosed generator. And I looked at the tank, and the tank looks good. And he said, oh no, when you pour gas in it, the gas flows out of the box onto the ground. So usually in these compact generators that are inside of the box, what happens is the fuel line coming from the fuel tank to the carburetor ends up going bad. That's where the leak comes from. Or it could be leaking out of the needle and seat in the carburetor. Either way, there are no signs that anyone tried to take this thing apart. It's just been sitting. All the screws are in place, nothing's missing. That's the information on the top of it. Anyway, so there's a pretty good chance that it's just a fuel line or it's going to need some carb work. So what I'm going to do is turn this thing around. Oops. Turn this thing around. And we're going to start pulling this outer box apart. We got 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and hopefully that will give me access to see the tank and the machine. So let me pull those apart with the Phillips and we'll be back. All right, 4 screws. Let's take this off, and you'll see some bugs and whatnot have been in there. That's what this all looks like. This is rust and poop, maybe mouse or rat or something has been in there. There's our carburetor, but it's not really giving me access to the tank the way I wanted. So the next thing I'm gonna do, basically these covers are just that, they're covers. So I'm going to take out these 4 screws as well, take this cover off. I may take the entire box apart so that I can see the underneath of the tank and see what we got in there. All right. Now so far, I'm glad this thing's been in a barn, not really exposed to the weather, because all the screws have come out fairly easily. There's a blower there, which helps with exhaust. And again, I am not seeing the tank very well. Before we go too far into this, what we need to know are the 2 main things. Is it going to run? And will it produce power? We got stop, on, and choke here. It doesn't look like there's any on-off for the actual power bank. So I think what we're gonna do, before we keep pulling stuff off, well, I guess it doesn't matter, it's a closed carb, so I have to take these 4 out also. I'm gonna take this off, and then that should lean forward. Let's see what happens. We got a We got to be able to spray it with some carb cleaner and see if it'll start. That's our pull cord here. And this box is self-contained, it holds itself. So we might as well just see what it looks like in there. Now the tank is attached to the front. Okay, this is our fuel line here. It's got a fuel shut-off petcock. Which it kind of looks like it turns off when you put it in the stop position. No, that just puts it into the off position. So it's not a fuel shut-off because there's no way to reach it. And the fuel line itself looks okay. So I think that's gonna be a pain. All right, I want to be able to, you know where I'll do it? It's a single cylinder here. Move the camera. This is our spark plug, right? Yeah, that's our spark plug. So if I pull the spark plug, I can spray some fluid down there, put the spark plug back in, and see if it'll start. Because the tank looks good. So before I bother filling it with anything, I mean, this is kind of old and dry, obviously, but my guess is that the fuel is coming out of the carburetor, not this. But we want to know if it'll start. So real quick, I'm going to put the two sides back on it, pull that, spray it, and we'll give it a spin, see if it starts. That's where we're going to start. All right, I put the two sides back on because this whole thing is self-contained. So without it, to try to pull the pull cord and get everything not to wobble off, there's going to be an issue. So I just temporarily put it back together and pull off the spark plug boot. Let's take out the plug. Now, y'all that watch my channel on the regular know that the reason I go about it this way is because it will only start and run for 1 or 2 seconds. I get to check the plug. I don't break out the spark plug tester or any of that crap. I don't check that and compression and all before, because it's really just a waste of time. And when you're going through stuff, you know, a few machines a day, if you can save yourself 20 or 30 minutes on each one, well, that just makes for a nicer day. I'm just putting that back in hand tight. If I pull this thing and it barks, then I know that compression's good. I know that spark is good. I know that everything's fine. And I know the deal. So we got a little bit sprayed. It's in the on position. Our choke is here, our stop is here, and on these inexpensive generators, there is no extra buttons of any kind. So let's just give it a pull or two. Usually it'll start on the 3rd or 4th pull when you spray it. So let's just see if it'll bark. Man, it's quiet. Feels like it has compression. Maybe we have a spark issue. Maybe I just didn't put enough in the spark plug hole. That does happen from time to time. Usually you're not flooding it out. You're just not putting in enough. And this can's almost empty, so I'm getting more of a miss than a shot. That's why I went to the trouble of doing it again. Put that back on. Put that back on. And then, if it doesn't start, then we check spark. Make sure you're still in. You're still in. And on. Yeah, there's no other kills. There we go. Yeah, I just didn't have enough fluid in there. So let me pull it, put some more in. We'll try it again. Okay, I paused the camera for a second. All I've done is exactly what you saw. I pulled the plug again, sprayed more starting fluid in there, put the plug back. The reason that I want to talk first is the first time I pulled it 10 or 11 times, nothing. And I said it's possible that I didn't spray enough into the cylinder to fire. It wasn't flooded, I didn't put enough in. And I could tell because the can was empty. So the second time I put in way more than I thought I needed because the can was empty, and it started on the very first pull. Now these things are excellently quiet. These Yamahas, these old Hondas, they are quiet, quiet, quiet. So this time I'm going to pull it a couple of times and let you hear that it starts, it runs for a second, and how quiet it is. Now that's exactly what we wanted to know. Now I know the compression's good. I know the spark is good. I know she's gonna run. Now, the carburetor's gonna be an issue, and we'll have to get into that in a few minutes. But what I wanna do real quick is I wanna get a light. I always use a light because they don't pull that many watts and they turn on instantly. So what I'm gonna do is get set up. I'm gonna put some more spray in, get it ready to start, plug a light in, then show you. And now when it starts and barks like that and runs for a second, that light should light up. That'll let me know that these plugs are good. I won't bother to test the DC. Right now we just want to know if it's generating power. So give me a second to get set up. Now for those of you that watch my channel on the regular and have made it this far, I would like to say that I took 4 hours yesterday riding around town just thinking, deciding. I've been smoking for 22 years. 10 months and 3 days. I started smoking on New Year's Eve of 1999, 2000. And I've been wanting to quit for a while. I smoke a lot more than I want, and it's expensive too, and it's bad for you and all these things. So anyway, yesterday I took the chance and I bought the nicotine gum, or the store brand of it. And I'd like to say that it has been successful. I'm chewing it right now, and I don't even want a cigarette. And I am extremely happy. Vapes never worked for me. They irritate my throat. And going cold turkey was dangerous to a couple of people when I tried it. So we're trying the Nicorette gum. It seems to be working. Fingers crossed that it will. So all I've done was plug in the light. We've got 2 plugs here, one here, one here. This looks like a DC power inlet. Now this is old school, so it doesn't have USBs or anything on it. But I just have, this is one of my shop lights. It's a LED shop light. And when I pull it and this thing starts, just like it did already twice, this time this light should come on for just a second. So let's see if that's gonna work. Hey! Now, hopefully you saw that on camera. That light did come on. It takes less than a second for the generator to spin to begin putting out power. Unfortunately, when you don't have a clean carburetor and a fuel source, it only barks for 1 to 2 seconds. 1,000, 2, 1,000, sometimes 3 before it shuts off. But as you saw, it did generate enough power to turn that light on before the engine died, which tells me it's putting out power. Now I will do that whole exercise again just to put the AC on the opposite plug. I'm not going to bother to show you that, but I will make sure that both plugs are working correctly. And at that point, we're going to have to put some fuel in the tank and see where it's leaking from. So I'll bring you back when it's time to put fuel in the tank. Okay, I got some gas. I took this side back off. I did test the other plug, it works fine. I took this side off because this is our carburetor. This is our fuel line to the carburetor from the gas tank. So if it's gonna leak, it's gonna leak from here where the fuel line goes on. It's gonna leak from here where the fuel line goes onto the carburetor, or it's gonna leak out of the needle and seat, which is what I suspect, and it's gonna overflow the carburetor. So basically, I don't want to waste too much fuel, but unfortunately sometimes it just has to be done. I am going to put, I only bought I think $1 worth of gas, and it's $3 a gallon, so 1/3 of a gallon, and I'm only going to put half of that in because you just have to have enough for gravity to push it up if it's leaking out of the carburetor, to push it up past the carb. So as long as it's got some in it, we'll know if it's going to leak out of here, and we'll know if it's going to leak out of here. But like I said, I suspect it's going to leak out of the carb itself, that it's going to, the needle and seat are not closing, which means that bowl is going to fill up, and gravity is going to keep pushing it down and fill it till it overflows into the machine or out this side. So all I can do at this point is make sure that there's enough gas in there to cause pressure so that that carburetor will overflow. And I can see the fluid now, the gas, at the filter line. There's a filter in these Yamaha slash Hondas. So we have enough fuel in there that if it's going to overflow, it should overflow. So I'm going to give that a few minutes and come back to it and see what happens. And there's our fuel leak. Gotcha. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a busted fuel line right here. It's leaking like a sieve. See it? So there's no way to shut it off. Unfortunately, I can't clamp it off. I can't turn it off. I want to put this into the off position and see if it'll stop. Okay, the off position also works the petcock. Now I've got that ripped off completely. If I turn it back on, the fuel will flow. If I put it in the stop position, I thought that was a petcock. So that's it. The fuel line was shot. Now, I did start it. I sprayed it with some carb spray. After I put the fuel in it, I put it on choke. I pulled it 8 or 10 times, nothing. So I put some carb spray in there, pulled it again. It did bark, but it did not stay running, which means the carb is shot. Been sitting in a barn for over 12 years. The carb is going to need to be cleaned in the very least. But in most cases, when these things have been sitting, if the carburetor is cheap enough, more than likely I will just replace the carburetor. But we're going to pull the carburetor apart next. We just know now that we have a bad fuel line. So that's where we are right now.